Now, one person we did hear from today for the first time, Karen Reed herself, doubling down, of course, saying she did not do this. She wants to know who did.
Said it feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Happy Mother's Day to all the mamas out there. Wanted to talk to you about Karen Reed. And the second question, the follow-up question that we never get to ask in this case. I think it's sincerely missing from this story. And that should tell you something upright. Does anybody remember when there was going to be a giant debate on this case between all the Karen Reed supporters and non-supporters? All the non-supporters showed up, and where were the Karen Reed supporters? Nowhere. Nowhere. Not one of them showed up to the debate after saying they would. So that will tell you something about this campaign and what I think is a campaign of don't believe your lying eyes, don't believe your lying ears, just believe what we tell you, even when it makes no sense. So first off, what is Karen Reed's defense story? Can someone tell me what happened, what they are alleging happened? Because they've gone from Brian Albert to Colin Albert, or Brian and Colin Albert, heard both of them involved, to Brian Higgins. And then it's they all beat up John O'Keefe, and now it's a mass conspiracy. They threw him out on the lawn as a seasoned police officer would do to cover up his crime. Just put it at the end of his driveway, essentially, right in front of his house, and think that all the police are going to just cover up for him. Are all the first responders lying? Every single one of them? And so many of them heard Karen Reed say some version of, I hit him, it's my fault. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Can't believe this happened. It's my fault. Oh my God, I hit him. I mean, how many variations are we going to have? But when you can't engage and you can't ask these questions, you can't even ask the follow-up question, you're just left with kind of a, I guess people have been telling me, you just don't get it. It's corrupt. Okay, show me how it was corrupt in this case. Show me where corruption happened, even how it happened. Oh, I forgot Chloe the dog. Now she's back. She's back in the story. Despite no dog DNA being found, not even any dog hair, as far as I know, has been found. We haven't even gotten to the defense case, but from their opening statement, it's impossible to follow what they think happened here. It's a cover-up, but how? And I'm seeing a lot of kind of like, this should have happened, what I call why come arguments. Like, why come it didn't happen like this? Why didn't they wake up? Meaning, why didn't the people in the Albert home wake up at 5 a.m. after, and they'll say there were sirens when there weren't sirens, there were lights. But if you pull down your shades, it's kind of hard to see those lights if you're deep in a sleep. But I contend if they all came running out and were awoken by the commotion, then that would have been even more a sign of the conspiracy, right? Why did they have to run out in the middle of a blizzard to see what happened? Clearly, they were already up and already covering up the crime. But everything has been painted as suspicious. The witnesses look nervous. Really? They look nervous? Testifying in front of a pitchforky mob, ready to take apart their looks, their testimony, do a deep dive into everybody that they've hung out with since that crowd. But I think a lot in true crime, so what becomes the popular narrative? And if you're lucky, and sometimes we're just lucky, like in the Jeffrey McDonald case, famous case, where really preceded the Chris Watts case, where we had Joe McGinnis, a writer, embed himself in the defense, watch the trial, report on the trial, and really wrote a very accurate view of the entire case. And then that became a miniseries. So when they tried to reverse his conviction, it became very, very hard for them because the public was so well informed. But in this case, we've seen the media just jump on board and be very happy to spit out Karen Reed's side of the story. Even starting with Gretchen Voss, her article. So we're going to take a look at Gretchen Voss's article. Vinnie Politan is still at it on Court TV. We're going to look at some of his stuff. He has a whole panel. But it's interesting that he's not really leading with the really shocking, some of the more shocking evidence, which is, I thought, in this trial, which is when Karen Reed's car was shown 8-something in the morning with a broken taillight. And the officer was just doing a wellness check on the minor children in John O'Keefe's home, happened to film. So it's totally, everybody said, oh, it's snow. No, it's totally white where it should be red on one side of the car. So let's take a look. Let's start out, before I get going. B. Tim says, that's a good point. Why is there no dog hair on the clothes? Any dog owner knows you get it all over you. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm a little biased having cats, but I travel with a lot of cat hair all around Manhattan. So yeah, that's what I would think. But this whole story of her rehoming the dog, that the dog wasn't good with other dogs, makes sense. Someone tried to get in the middle of a dog fight and got nipped. So now Chloe is Cujo. And of course, we're supposed to dislike anyone who really rehomed their dog. had to go through that difficult decision. We can make a judgment on them, having not ever met Chloe or lived with her. Oh, it's wild. This case is wild. And what's going to happen at the end of it? This is what I've been thinking about. What's going to happen at the end of the Karen Read trial? So if she gets convicted, I would guess that the Free Karen Read campaigners will go on, and it'll be Free Karen Read from prison. And if she gets acquitted, that's more interesting to me. What happens to this whole group of people? Do they just go on and find another cause? Because it seems pretty obvious to me that they're useful now to this movement. But I would doubt that Karen Read would want to hang out with a Free Karen Reader should she get acquitted. But here is, so this started it, right? This is one of the big stories. It's even coming into evidence in this case, the Karen Read case in Canton, the killing that tore a town apart by Gretchen Voss. And I'm just going to start with the beginning of it. And what I want you to notice is how much it follows Karen Read's own narrative. Snow had just started to fall as John O'Keefe and Karen Read stepped into the Waterfall Bar and Grill on Washington Street, Canton's main drag, on a Friday night in late January 2022 at around 11 p.m. It was the couple's second stop of the night after visiting another popular local pub. O'Keefe, a burly, brown-haired Boston Police Department officer, had been living in Canton since 2014, raising his niece and nephew after his sister died of a brain tumor. Interesting that Karen Read, one of her first court appearances, in addition, we know she has MS, but told the court that through her lawyer that she had a brain tumor. And her husband succumbed to a heart attack 2 months later. The kids affectionately called their Funkle by the nickname JJ. For the past 2 years, he had dated Read, an equity analyst and adjunct professor at Bentley University, who lived in Mansfield but spent much of her time at O'Keefe's helping with the kids. Inside the bar, O'Keefe spotted friends sitting at a high top near the band, and he and Read walked over to them. At the table sat O'Keefe's neighbor, Chris Albert, town selectman, his brother, Brian Albert, also a Boston police officer who leads the fugitive apprehension team and was featured on TNT's Boston's Finest, and Brian's sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe. All had been raised in Canton, a middle-class town of some 24,000 people, located about 20 miles south of Boston, where families, lives, and social calendars are often dictated by high school and weekend sports. Okay, so she's setting the scene, right? That night, as the storm rolled into town, parents in the bar had a pretty good hunch they'd get a hall pass from the typical Saturday grind of shuttling kids to sporting events. As the band played, the mood was festive and upbeat. O'Keefe downed beers while Read drank vodka sodas, lots of them. While according to her, she only had 4. According to the Commonwealth, she had 9. When the clock ticked to midnight, it was nearly last call. The night wasn't over, though. Brian Albert announced he was headed home to have a beer with his son for his birthday and invited the group to join. O'Keefe wanted to keep the party going. Read, tired, buzzed, and hungry, was less sure, but agreed to at least give him a ride. On the way out, O'Keefe grabbed a half-full cocktail glass off the table, took a slug, and carried the rest of the drink out the door with him. So this is totally different than what we heard in in court with Jen McCabe saying to Karen Reed, you're coming with us. Where are we going? Oh, it's going to be a surprise. Like, and we know from the text message that John O'Keefe didn't know where he was going. He was texting Jen McCabe, where to? And then she put out the address, 34 Fairview. So already this feels quite different than what we're being told in court. Wonder why? Because I would guess this would be Karen Reed's version, right? The couple walked over to Reed's black Lexus SUV. So, of course, Karen Reed, of course, is being presented as a super successful, sort of a more upper class woman with her Lexus and her important teaching job. Leaving foot tracks in the white dusting of snow and climbed inside, Reed sat behind the wheel and O'Keefe plugged the address 34 Fairview into the Waze before they drove off. We know this is untrue. We know this is untrue from the court filings. None of this has been. So it changes it. So it's like, he made me go. This is Karen Reed saying, I was really hungry and tired, but he insisted, my annoying boyfriend insisted on going. I was just nice enough to drive. When they arrived at the Alberts home, O'Keefe stepped out of the car. Reed, though, decided to leave. Oh, really? Did he step out of the car? It wasn't after a fight, nothing happened. There seems to be something missing in this, right? Several hours later, around 4:30 a.m., Reed says she woke up alone. So now this is going, now Reed becomes the narrator when she's really been the narrator all along. Why is Gretchen Voss so manipulative here? Why doesn't she just tell her, this is what Reed told me happened? Instead, we have these paragraphs like, this is the truth here, nothing but the truth. And it's totally wrong at least from what's being presented in court. In the same clothes from the evening before. Said she woke up in the same clothes the evening before. Who else thinks she was up all night? Raise your hand. I do. On the couch at O'Keefe's house, from a living room window, she could see the nor'easter bearing down hard. His niece is asleep upstairs and his nephew was at a sleepover, but O'Keefe was nowhere to be found. Reed said she thought to call McCabe to ask if she'd seen O'Keefe. Reed didn't have her number, but knew that O'Keefe's niece, who was close friends with McCabe's daughter, probably did. So now we're skipping all of Karen Reed's own weird statements to her niece, her own weird statements to both McCabe and Carrie Roberts, where she told Carrie Roberts on the phone that he got hit by a snowplow. Maybe that's coming up, but I mean, this is just crazy. And this is what I'm talking about, true crime reporting. So I think, I don't know what Gretchen Voss, I guess she wanted to show both sides, but she went right to Reed. Doesn't seem to interview anyone in the Commonwealth, any DA there really knows the case. And it seems to be all from Karen Reed's perspective. Neither woman had seen, or did she wonder? Because the Commonwealth is arguing that perhaps in the even Karen Reed said she was driving around before this in a 2-mile radius, that she had already visited the site where John O'Keefe was and then went home, called her friends and collected her friends to go discover him. And I think that's a much more likely scenario. So we're going to return to that. It's a long article, but it's never been really corrected. It's interesting, the 2 small corrections down the bottom are so inconsequential to some of the other more major mistakes. I don't know. It's like, it's so poor. The best true crime reporting I find is in the local reporting. And so this is obviously an anomaly. It's bizarre. I don't get it. When the whole conspiracy theory is so bizarre, no? So the other thing that I think this is from Innocence Fraud Watch channel. They put together a really interesting little video about how Karen Reed's defense is trying to really put together.
Not to belabor the point, but just to make the Commonwealth's position clear, the Commonwealth is not opposing. The Commonwealth, however, does not assent, does not concede anything as it relates to any sort of relationship or whatever is being termed as a close personal relationship. The relationship, as the Commonwealth understands it, between essentially Trooper Proctor and Miss McCabe is that Trooper Proctor has a sister who has a friend who has a sister who has a husband who has a brother who has a wife who has a sister who is Jennifer McCabe. And it's such a close personal relationship that after apparently scouring social media, there are exactly 0 photos the council has produced of Miss McCabe and Trooper Proctor pictured together at any point in time. And essentially what you have to establish this close personal relationship is a wedding party from a decade ago and some photographs of Trooper Proctor with children purported to be Miss McCabe's children, which are not Miss McCabe's children. But given the limited scope of what is being asked for, the Commonwealth is not opposing the motion, but would obviously request that if the court were to allow the motion, that both sides would have equal access to inspect and copy whatever screenshots are then provided by the record holders, that being.
I mean, literally the defense has been pulling up Facebook pictures from 15 years ago. So even if the firefighter knew Caitlin Albert, what if she were best friends with her? What would that prove? What about the other responders that heard practically the same thing? I mean, they failed to have really answered the question, why Karen Reed? Why does anyone want to frame Karen Reed for this? How would they know to frame Karen Reed? And if they were framing her, wouldn't they want to run out, right, and solidify the story, get in with the first responders right away and get in the story? Instead, they slept through it. Isn't that, doesn't make any sense to me.
The third-party witnesses. Thank you.
To Altman. And I'm just getting my text. Mm-hmm. I said, and I got this approval from Karen. And Karen told me what to send. So I said, first, I want to thank you for standing up for Karen. She's a friend of mine since college, and this whole thing is a nightmare. And then I sent her a picture of Proctor with those 3 kids because Karen said, send that. And I wrote, this is lead detective Michael Proctor and Jennifer McCabe's children. Elizabeth Proctor is his wife.
So does everybody get that? So Karen Reed herself started that before it ever started it on social media, before ever presenting it in court through her flying monkeys. But let's check out what Vinnie Politan, our favorite person who has no opinion, who only wants to get to the truth, but sure does a lot of Karen Reed talking points.
Where within your house was everybody else sort of situated?
So everybody was in the kitchen, and then we have a connecting dining room, but it's opened. It's only, a difference of 5 feet. And then we have the family room den that's adjacent to the kitchen. But they're all close proximity.
That's the homeowner, one of the homeowners, Brian Albert, talking about the after party and where everyone was in the house. So what we're going to do, this segment, we're going to take a look at what is going on inside and the floor plans from the perspective of what could people see from inside the house if a murder was taking place outside of the house. Then in our next segment, we'll take a look at the defense theory. But here we're going to focus on the prosecution theory. So let's take a look.
Really? What could they see? Can we I hope I still have a picture here of how it's like almost right on the tree line. In a nor'easter, in the middle of the night, while snow is coming down, what they could see. Here's a copy of so the yellow car would have been right around where he was found. Do you get how far that is? A view? They're supposed to see all the way out there in the dark. Maybe even a better view over here. See how far that is from the sight lines? Okay.
At the floor plan and some images that we have for you. Let's put them up on the screen. Okay, so start with the floor plan and the circle. That is the main front door, because there's actually 2 front doors, but that's the main front door that goes into the foyer. To the left of it is the study. The picture on the top left, the circle to the left, that's right where that front door is, and then you see the entrance to the study. The bottom picture, you can see where in the house the study is. That's the rectangular, long horizontal square, rectangle, and then the longer vertical rectangle, that is the main front door. So these are the 2 areas that are closest to the flagpole, closest to where John O'Keefe, according to the prosecution, was murdered. But what we heard from the testimony was nobody was in the study. Okay, so where are people? Well, people are described as being in the kitchen and the dining room. So let's take a look at that. Start with the floor plan. That's the dining room, which opens up to the kitchen, which is just behind it. You look to the top left photo, that's from the kitchen looking into the dining room area. So it's one of those gatherings, right? People get together, they seem to hover in the kitchen, and it opens to the dining room where there's more seating. So what do we see when we look at the front of the house? Those are 2 windows, okay? 2 windows that are sort of in the middle of the home, not the closest to the flagpole, but could you see what was happening by the flagpole from there? Would you see or hear a murder if you're in the dining room, okay? Let's get to one other room where people were described as being, which is the living room, which is a little further down, right? You can see where it is on the floor plan. There's another front door that takes you into the living room. So they have 2 front doors. You look in the living room, what do you have? You got the fireplace, and then you can see where the door is there and potential windows. I don't know how much you're seeing there, perhaps a little bit.
Aren't you glad we have the full floor plan? Aren't you glad? I mean, are we buying a home here? We're getting a full, this is the kind of minutia that they go into on some true crime media where does all of this matter? Does all of it matter? So I feel like the last 2 pictures I showed really, really put this theory to rest, but maybe I'm biased here.
Towards the left, but what you're really seeing is the driveway, and you're seeing the front of the house. So a lot of questions that I have. Again, we're focusing right now on the prosecution theory that the murder took place on that front lawn with people in the house. Does it make sense? Should people have seen something, heard something?
So he's using the M word, the murder. The murder took place, Vinny. So what he's saying is, why is Vinny punching those words? He's punching those words because he wants us to believe that it took place in the home, that would be more normal, that this wasn't some kind of breakup violence when we know that they weren't getting along well. Unfortunately, I said this last episode, not sure everybody heard it, that John O'Keefe's children, his nieces and nephews, so these are the children that he took on as his own when his sister and brother-in-law sadly passed. They are going to be testifying without cameras, and their testimony will not be broadcast and is not to be, so there's a complete blackout on their testimony. And from reading the filings, that what I've read is that the niece said they fought about everything, that they were fighting all the time, that John O'Keefe had told Karen Reed to get out the day before this happened, and he went and slept at a friend's house. So because we're not going to hear any of that, we're going to keep hearing the Free Karen Readers say, oh, did you hear how every witness, they loved Karen Reed and how they seemed happy that night? Well, it's quite normal to put your best face forward and not say, oh yeah, we're here as a couple, but we've been fighting. Yeah, we haven't been getting along, guys. I know we're out for a good time on a Friday night, but let me tell you about our couple's problems. That's not a normal thing. So, of course, they were making the best of it publicly. But so we won't hear a lot about also Karen Reed and her control over the Ring cameras, because there has been some talk that perhaps there were Ring videos deleted. Could they be found on John O'Keefe's phone? That'll be quite interesting. I've never owned a Ring camera. I don't really know how they work. Living in an apartment in Manhattan, I don't know. But that will be interesting. So it's really sad to me that we won't know what the children understood, the ruling from the judge correctly. It's a complete blackout.
Bring in my guest. Joining me, Karen Reed supporter and expert, Nick Rocco, defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr., who at one time represented a nephew of the homeowners, Colin Albert, and the YouTuber behind the Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan, is with us. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Kevin, all right? How could a murder take place in the front of that house and no one inside the house notices anything? Explain that to me.
You mean take place outside?
Okay, there's the why come. They woke up because there were no sirens, because it was a nor'easter, because it was the middle of the night, because there's such things as curtains of any. I know that they think that that's a defense gotcha talking point, but not really. Eva says, Roberta, this area of Fairview Road was known as Spring Valley in Canton. I sold many properties in there. Many of the Patriot players bought in there. I've heard it's an $800,000 home, Eva. So no small change for that kind of house.
We're going with the. I'm trying to set the rules here. We're going with the prosecution theory first, that the murder took place outside, close to the flagpole, and yet people are in the house. We showed you where the windows are. We showed you where everything is. Why doesn't anyone inside the home notice a murder taking place?
Well, the state's theory is that she backed up at 23 miles an hour for 60 feet, right? How long does that take? A few seconds, a couple of seconds?
Did she know it was a murder? It was an act? It's like a second-degree murder. And it would have happened very quickly. And look how far their home is from the street. what kind of noise are they expecting from the actual? Let me just show you again. So this would have been maybe 12:30 in the early morning hours of January 29th, 2022, excuse me. So far, they're far. But what's more interesting, so we have two kind of how comes, why nots, why didn't this happen? There's been all these that have had answers. Why wasn't there fluids on top of the snow, right? We heard that. And we heard about how it, how it would have settled, how also with the wiping of the roads, it would settle. It was like zero visibility out there. And that's what's been so bad, I think, for the defense is their own videos, where in opening statements, we had David Yannetti, Karen Reed's lawyer, say, oh, it was just some light flurries, guys, just some light flurries. And then we see these videos where it's like this crazy nor'easter. You can't see anything. You can barely identify who's who from the video.
So if you didn't happen to be looking out the window and, would you have heard something? Well, it's the winter. You got the storm windows up. It's windy outside. It's snowy. So I think it would have been just kind of random luck if someone happened to look outside and see what happened.
Joseph, what are your thoughts about that? Not having an eyewitness or an ear witness to this alleged murder that prosecutors are saying happened?
Do you know that when gunshots go off in New York, oftentimes very few people, they think it was a car, backfiring. People will rationalize it when they actually do hear something, when they're actually conscious and awake, and it's the middle of the day. We tend not to think of the worst. And of course, we want to go back in time to Jen McCabe's text where she's saying, hello, hello. She's writing John O'Keefe saying, hello, hello. We'd like to go back in time and grab her and say, run out there, make sure he's okay. Check under the trees. But your first thought is that maybe they got in a fight, maybe they changed their mind, maybe you'll find out what happened the next day, meaning an innocent explanation for it. He's with his girlfriend, maybe they got in a fight, which most likely did happen.
Well, good evening. Not many murders do have eyewitnesses, right? A lot of them that don't end up at trial. You got to look at the geographical positioning of the house on the lot and where the locus of the actual accident was. It was to the front, to the left. So it doesn't look like there's a good vantage point. Not only do you have the conditions outside, but you have the conditions inside, right? This is an after party. I would imagine people were loud and boisterous. People were coming and going, and we heard testimony that Brian Albert Jr. had friends over. Anyone knows anecdotally, you huddle in the kitchen, people are laughing, having a good time, talking. I don't know if you would necessarily hear a car striking a human being. It's at least more plausible than not hearing.
Jill Downey, this is kind of interesting. That was a great point, though, that lawyer just made. He's like, look, we don't have eyewitnesses very often on a lot of these kind of crimes. Jill Downey says Roberta does a media blackout on the children's testimony mean we won't be able to read the testimony afterwards. I'm not sure. I would think that we would be able to get that if you can buy the transcripts. I would think it would be in the transcripts. I think it's just for until the verdict, I would think, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I wish I knew. But right now, I think it's going to be interesting test. I'm really disappointed just as, someone who's interested in this trial. That was testimony I was looking forward to.
12 people not hearing or seeing a human being get pummeled to death inside.
We're going to get to that in the next segment. We'll get to that in the next segment.
Sure, I think
that's
it's
why I try to
plausible.
set the parameters best I can, the best that I can.
You do a great job of doing it. One thing, though, Matt Johnson, he did say something. I just have to correct him about, and Alan Jackson said it was, I think, ludicrous or pathetic, his explanation. I think Brian Albert was pretty clear and concise that the information he got at 6:30 in the morning was that John O'Keefe had already been transported by ambulance to the hospital. And look, he's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. He stays in because it's an investigation. It's not his investigation. There's no jurisdiction. It's on his property. Had he gone out, the same people complaining that he didn't go out would have said that he was meddling in an investigation that had nothing to do with him. So I just wanted to add that, augment Matt Johnson's introductory segment there.
Absolutely. All right, Nick, your thoughts about the murder taking place on the front lawn. You've got people in the house apparently coming and going, and no one sees or hears anything.
Well, you know what I think happened. So as far as people not looking out the window, we do know that Matt McCabe was kind of hanging out by the window because in one of his interviews, he stated that he saw V-shaped tire marks outside in the snow, indicating that that would have been when Karen turned around. So if she had hit him, he was apparently looking out the window at the right time and would have seen something. But as far as everybody else, I mean, I just saw the layout of the house there. There's a few windows on the bottom. Yeah, somebody would have had been looking outside at the exact moment or after the fact that she, quote, supposedly hit him.
But what he's not saying there is that, so I just showed that picture. Let me see if I can show you again. So you see this picture? You see the truck, the red truck? It wasn't red. But there was a person who pulled in right behind, and now I'm forgetting his last name. Help me in the comments if you remember. Who pulled in right behind John O'Keefe and Karen Reed and saw her do that three-point turn. So not only did they see the three-point turn tracks in the snow, there was an eyewitness who saw Karen Reed make that three-point turn that night. So he's conveniently leaving that out of there.
But I do believe that if John was on the lawn outside while everyone was inside, when they were leaving the house to get in their vehicles alone.
Thank you. Nagel was his name. Thank you. So Ryan Nagel, thank you. So these are also Tuesday Gazette. These are her illustrations that I'm using from when she was a guest on my show. Everyone should subscribe to her Substack. So he's making it seem like, oh, it's so unusual that he saw.
They would have seen the body on the lawn, and especially Jen McCabe, because she was parked in the driveway. So when they backed out of the driveway and cut the wheel to the
they would have seen, they should have. But they didn't because it was dark and it was far away. Let's take a look at how far away this is from the driveway. Pretty far. I love this shoulda, woulda, coulda defense. It should have gone like this. I had someone in my comment section talk about how much fluids they should have picked up. And if they didn't have that many, then then he was placed out there. It was clearly a conspiracy, and John O'Keefe was killed in the home.
Right.
I mean, this is
those headlights would have been
crazy.
Exactly on that
We're going into
flagpole,
crazy
and
town.
John would have been laying there.
And that's before the snow falls, right? That's before the 6 inches fall.
It was lightly snowing at that point, but at that point, when she backed out of the driveway, those lights were on the flagpole.
Okay, I want to take a listen now to Nicole Albert. She also testified, the other homeowner, talking about the next morning, right? You know, what did they see? What did they hear as they're in their bedroom?
So on January 29th, you had 2 bedroom windows on the left side of the house that were facing the front lawn where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that Ms. Reed, Jennifer McCabe, and Carrie Roberts arrived outside your property around 6:04 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Did you hear any fire trucks that morning?
I did not.
Did you hear any ambulances?
I did not.
You didn't see the flashing lights of emergency vehicles outside your bedroom window?
I did not. My blinds were shut. My curtains were closed. I did not see anything.
Your Honor, okay, I'm calling for a mistrial. Clearly, these people are guilty of being heavy sleepers, which means Karen Reed is innocent. End the trial right now. Acquitted. Jury go home. They're all heavy sleepers. Poor Elizabeth Little. I mean, I've never seen a defense do so much with so little. I mean, we have Mr. Nebercracker, the cartoon guy, gotten into this. The fact that the victim in this case had a sense of humor is somehow dark and sinister. And there were no sirens. And they had shades. I mean, what are we talking about here? And our media, our lamestream media, is so happy to back this up. Be like, I don't know. This is a really close case. Is everyone perjuring? Is every witness perjuring themselves on the stand? For what reason, we don't know. But I guess because no one likes Karen Reed. And everyone wants to frame Karen Reed.
Okay, let's put up on the screen now so everyone has an idea where the primary bedroom is, where they were sleeping. You look at the floor plan. It's all the way to the left. There it is. You look to the photo there. You can see which way the bed is situated. You see where the windows are, and then you can see where the windows are on the outside of the house, the closest to the alleged murder scene. Right there is where that flagpole is. Let me ask you, Kevin, they don't know anything's going on in front of their house until the sister-in-law goes through the unlocked front door and then bursts into their bedroom. Does that make sense to you?
When you first listen to it, and when I first listened to it a year ago, no. But when you process it through, 100%. Look, we had an incident in my family's house last September with a bad storm that went through and the power was out for a few days. On our street, there was a tree down right in front of the house. Later at night, about 9 o'clock, a fire truck came and sat in front of the downed tree right in front of our driveway for about 10 minutes. It had the lights on, but no flashing sirens. My dad was about the same exact distance as Brian Albert would, and he fell asleep and took a nap and never even saw the fire truck come in. So I don't think it's unusual. It's a windy day. People were sleeping. And also, just to reaffirm what Joe said, the dash cam video shows that Jen McCabe went into the house that morning at 6:34 and the lights came on at 6:39. The only way that Brian Albert could have administered CPR to John O'Keefe is if he somehow caught up to that ambulance before it reached the hospital, because that ambulance was gone. So Alan Jackson spreads more nonsense
we'll see.
Candy on Halloween.
That's going to be the cross.
Okay, when I was young, I was such a heavy sleeper when I was little. I fell off the top of a bunk bed and didn't wake up. Okay, so he's totally right. And when you live in the country, trees fall down, big branches fall down. Sometimes things get hit by lightning, you don't wake up. It's one of the more annoying true crime lines of talking points, which is it should have happened this way. And I love when they assign it to people accused of crimes. Like OJ would never have done that, never have taken 2 people out. right when he was about to take a trip to Chicago, when he knows that the limousine driver is going to pick him up. Like, these are not the most rational thinkers. You know what I'm saying? It's an emotional act. Or they're too good a person, or too nice a person, or not the kind of person.
Examination on Monday. That's something to look forward to.
Which I think, which is what I think we're getting with this everyone loved Karen Reed story. Oh, this is really great for the defense. And they're not getting it. Really? It's really great that everyone initially, including all the O'Keeffes, loved Karen Reed, treated her like part of their family. No one had any beef against Karen Reed. Because it's a little hard to make a giant conspiracy against her where everyone's okay with framing her when everyone loved her. That's a little bit of a problem with their theory there.
Let me ask you, Joseph, does it make sense to you that all this is happening right in front of the house? The primary bedroom is the closest to the crime scene. Flashing lights, lots of people, people screaming. What are your thoughts? Does it make sense that you're not woken up until your sister-in-law opens an unlocked front door and then goes into and opens your bedroom?
Sure. I think a lot of us have similar stories to Kevin's about police response, emergency response in neighborhoods where you have discussions with your neighbors the next day and they didn't see anything or hear anything. You also have to remember they had gotten home they had went to bed at around 2:30 in the morning. They had been drinking all night. And when I saw the cruiser cam footage, it didn't seem to me that there were sirens on any of the emergency vehicles. I could be mistaken. But I think what they say lines up with the video of Jen McCabe going in the house, the lights going on. The story is plausible, it's believable, it's consistent. So I certainly think that the position of the body where it was such, just straddling the property line between the two houses where there were no sirens, I think it's certainly believable.
Nick, I'll give you the final word on this. Does it make sense to you?
Well, let's just say we believe her testimony and her blinds and curtains were shut. You know, she may not have heard sirens. She may not have seen lights. But there were 2 phone calls to her at 6:09 and 6:07, and they were both picked up. The Celebrite data shows that whether it was Nicole who answered the phone or Brian, somebody answered the phone. And it's going to be proven in court. So regardless of what they saw outside, they knew early that morning that John was outside.
All right, Kevin's saying it's voicemail. Again, that's something else that's going to...
Right, that went right to voicemail. And I think that's proven by what we know about it went right to voicemail. What's going to happen to this guy when he realizes, I don't know if he ever will, realize that he spent years of his life pushing something totally untrue. And this is why, Scientology classes are so expensive after you have so much invested. But my issue is with Court TV is supposed to be talking about this trial, the actual witnesses. Instead let's talk about what was presented in court. And I feel like I think it's pretty obvious that he's not bringing up any of the massive points that have been made by the state. Karen Reed's own words. So many first responders heard her say some variation, except for one who heard her say nothing. Karen Reed, her own weird behavior that day, never talked to any of the family again. Why aren't we discussing that? Left the house, never to talk to any of the O'Keeffes ever again. Isn't that odd? I guess I'll have to remember the bad times. Isn't it a little too Wendy Adelson for you guys? For those of you who followed my coverage on the Dan Markel case. that she brought her whole family in there and packed up her stuff immediately, and that was what was on her mind, to get all my stuff out of John O'Keefe's home. Her own weird interviews, still to this day. She's asked, did you do it? And she can't say she didn't do it. Her lawyer has to answer it for her. Not to mention the way she runs this campaign, attacking anyone who dare say she might be guilty of this crime, harassing the family members of the man she claims to love and was the patron saint of Canton, seems to put him down at every possible What are we talking about here? It's bizarre.
That developed during the course of this case. All our guests are staying with us. When we come back, we'll evaluate the scene now based upon the defense theory that John O'Keefe was ambushed inside that house.
Scan now.
Yeah. Now we're not going to talk about we're going to talk about the defense theory that that we're going to talk about the defense theory that can't even be proven. We're going to talk about something that the defense made up out of their own imagination now. Not any of the evidence that was presented in court. This is supposed to be court TV. Not theories brought out of the imagination of
John O'Keefe 100% went in that basement. We know he went in the house because his Apple Health data shows 3 flights of stairs. Okay,
Oh, this again. We already debunked this. His Apple Health data. He was in the middle. Oh, let me see if I still have this up. Hold on, guys. Can't believe I have to go over this again. His GPS never moved from under his body. His phone never moved from under his body. And when he was going up and down steps at 12:22, the native location of the Cellbrite and the Axiom both show O'Keefe's phone located by the intersection of Oakdale Road and Pinecone, approximately a little over half a mile away from 34 Fairview. So he was at an intersection when that happened. And his phone goes right from, never moves from under his body. You can't prove that he ever went into the house. So why is Vinny continuing with this segment when he knows these things are easily found out to be false? Why is he pushing this out?
Another important fact is Brian Albert said today that he brought Brian Higgins.
Right? I thought Vinny was only looking for the truth. He was only looking for the truth. Remember that when he told us all that? Easy to find. You really think you're going to find the truth with someone who's been on the free Karen Reed side for forever and ever? And is pushing out these now debunked talking points still? And you're giving them credibility, Vinny, by doing this, by not debunking them immediately.
Upstairs to view pictures. But in Brian Albert stated that. In Brian Higgins' proffer with the feds, he stated he's never been upstairs. So when they're all downstairs, right, a fight breaks out. Chloe's downstairs at some point, and
Chloe is the dog. Chloe's the dog.
Correct.
Just want to make sure.
There is a reason why. So the layout of that is basically you have 2 separate sides of the basement with a bathroom in the middle, and they're claiming that, oh, there was a plumbing issue. That's why we did the basement floor over. So when they ripped up all the rug because it was soaked in blood, 3 pints of blood, actually, because that's how much blood John had lost. They also ripped up all the plywood floor. They put new plywood floor down, but no rug. So when they sold that house, right, the whole basement floor is all plywood.
This guy really needs a crystal ball and a turban to tell us what went on that night. And so Chloe was downstairs, and then after they went downstairs, they talked a little bit about whether they'd seen the latest episode of whatever they were watching on TV. I can see it now. It's all coming back into my memory. I'm having a memory. I can see it clearly in my crystal ball, what happened that night. Because it couldn't possibly be I hit him. It's all my fault. Karen Reed's fault. No. This is much, much more likely. So Chloe was downstairs. Everybody, and they redid their floor. And they had to, this much blood came out. Because we know this much blood came out. They had to do this all. And then they all pretended to sleep as soon as the first responders came. None of them wanted to come out and try to get in and get their story out first to the first responders, knowing there would be police there.
Plywood. Now, I have property. When a flood happens, you rip up the area that's wet, moldy. You don't rip up from wall to wall. Why would you do that? Because Nicole Albert said today, they couldn't afford to live in the house. They couldn't afford to maintain the house. They had no money. So all of a sudden they had money to rip up the floor? No. You found 6 drops of blood outside.
Right. They clearly ripped up the floor because they had to. They had no money to do it, so they ripped it up just because it was a murder. What are they? This guy is literally insane.
The gash in the back of John's head was 3 inches wide, and he was drinking. His blood was thin. There would have been blood all over the snow outside. It would have been way too much blood to put in solo cups. Where are the 3 pints of blood? I mean, John O'Keefe was in that house.
Kevin Lenahan, your thoughts. Did John O'Keefe go into the basement?
GPS was designed by the U.S. military to fly a cruise missile 1,000 miles through an open window. Okay, it's the most accurate location data in the world. And during the time when the defense alleges that John was climbing up and down 3 flights of stairs, exactly during that time they were driving to the house. That's what GPS shows. GPS shows that at least his phone never went inside the house, never even went towards the driveway. The phone was found, and the GPS shows roughly where Karen parked, at the edge of the property. So the idea of John going in the house becomes a stretch. It means he had to have dropped his phone and gone in there. As far as all this information about what happened in the basement floor, I don't know where Nick gets that from. Maybe he has a source that I don't know about, because it's not anything that's revealed in the records.
Joseph Krowski, your thoughts about John O'Keefe?
It comes from a valuable source, my imagination. My imagination, the most valuable source of all. The telling tall tales comes from Nicodemus. Oh, thanks, Andy. This is wild. This is wild, wild, wild.
Entering that home that night.
So look, I appreciate what Nick does. I've spent my career, I've argued third-party culprit evidence. I've argued that police have coached or coerced witnesses. I've argued police have planted evidence, but in this case, what is the genesis of all of these theories? At some point, you have to have percipient witnesses in evidence. Just like too many of the theories to date This seems to be made up of whole cloth without any evidence whatsoever. If John O'Keefe went in that house, why did it take Karen Reed a year to make that allegation? Why did she go to Stoughton District Court and her lawyers say if she hit him, it was an accident? If she had seen him go in that house, don't you think when she showed up at that scene at 6 a.m, she would have been demanding an explanation for what happened? And as far as the staircase, look, it's one of those.
Right. And why was Karen Reed so uninterested in what happened? Notice she didn't ask what happened. Did anyone see anything? Did anyone hear from John that night? She seemed to kind of know right away what happened. According to her, she was asking, could I have hit him? That's the only sign of curiosity she says she showed. I'm not sure if that really happened. I tend to believe the first responders who said she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. But even say, let's take her word. She said, did I hit him? The only possible scenario or probable scenario that Karen Reed herself is putting out there is that she did it. It's wild. This is just like, I may one day OD from the amount of nonsense of these innocence fraud campaigns. I may one day, just one day, it'll be too much. And I'll hear another, why come this didn't happen theory, and I will spontaneously combust. It may happen one day. This is getting me close to it. I swear, this is insane.
Interesting things. And no disrespect to Nick, again, but I think the following's just become way too obsequious. No one wants to question anything. I know from dealing with forensics, you cannot completely, solely, exclusively rely on data, including Apple. I mean, this could be a battle of the titans between Google and GPS and Apple, but until we hear the experts, I don't believe they're going to be able to establish that he climbed 3 flights of stairs in that house. And the theory about the basement, where is the evidence? Where's the witness? That floor wasn't torn up, my understanding was, for several months after that, and it was part of an insurance claim. Just like trying to sell the house, Nicole Albert was able to answer without delay. We contacted what's called a prior consistent statement. We contacted the realtor before anything happened on that front yard. And by the way, if I lived there and people are driving by and it become a tourist attraction and people were gawking at me and name calling my family, I would probably move my family out of that house too.
But this story didn't start getting a lot of coverage until Turtle Boy started reporting it in April, and they moved. So nobody was driving by that house at that point. They were left alone for a very long time.
Part of a giant conspiracy, guys. Do you guys get it? Turtle Boy hadn't written about it yet. The harassment campaign hadn't started. They were already conspiring. How do we get out of here? How do we change the basement? How do we do more things to cover up our crime and blame it on Karen? Originally, this was not even a second-degree murder case. How did they know? How do they know that their secret would come out and would all be blamed on Karen? Come on. This is absurd.
And there is a reason why Michael Proctor only got geofence data for Google phones. Not a lot of people have Google phones. Majority of those people in that house had Apple phones. Why didn't he get the Apple geofence data? Because it would put John in the house. Because Michael Proctor is covering up for everybody in that house. It's a fact.
So I think something really interesting. Let me go. I'll go quick.
It's a fact. My own imagination, but I'll call it a fact. That makes it so. Because I said it. It makes it so. Michael Proctor is out. So he's investigating and covering up for everybody. In touch with everybody and covering up. telling them all what to do? Is that how it worked?
I'm going to go with Kevin
I thought
first.
they were
Go
already
ahead, Kevin.
conspiring that night.
Just as a really quick piece of data here. So they know exactly where John was when he entered into his phone 34 Fairview. And it was a little over a mile away because John had never been to the house before. And as Vinny said, driving there, it's about a 5-minute drive to get from the waterfall there. And from that spot where he entered in into the waves of 34, it took him 4 minutes to get there. They actually shot past the street and had to turn around. That is exactly during the time when Rich Green, the data expert for the defense, says John was inside the house and going up and down stairs. It's just not even possible, according to 2 separate reliable sets of data.
All right, we are out of time for tonight. We're out of time for this week. But Monday's a big day. Cross-examination of Brian Albert. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to send out subpoenas over the weekend. Make sure all 3 of you come back on Monday. But thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend.
Unreal, right? That one. So that's the way it's going. And more of our news media is jumping on the bandwagon. I have too many questions. Yeah, those questions, all these questions have easy answers. So why does the autopsy pictures that were leaked, why does it look like they were changed dramatically to make it look like a dog bite? That's one. You've seen fake autopsy pictures. And ask why it looks too much like a dog bite. No way did he get hit by a car. The 227 phone search, which is easily disproven, which is the opening of a browser. When the actual search, how long does it take, right, to pass away in the cold? 6:23, 6:24 is the real time. That was done at Karen Reed's request. So what are we talking about here? And yes, I feel bad for Brian Albert coming up on a really difficult cross. And Vinny in this says, this is where the defense case begins. Really? Because all the Karen Reed people said that David Yannetti won it on opening statement on the first day. They've done this with every single witness. Put them through a barrage of ridiculous and pointless and cross-examinations. Grueling cross-examinations. And these people did nothing, but had the misfortune of being witnesses in a crime that they had nothing to do with. They've been harassed for over a year. I'm really shocked that none of the Turtle Boy evidence has come in during cross-examination. I was really shocked, especially Friday. I really thought it would come in. But that's why they look nervous. These people have been hunted all year by the Free Karen Reed campaign. And if the campaign itself should be your first clue, if you were wrongfully convicted, would you really want the victim? It doesn't have to be your victim if you're wrongfully accused, let's say not convicted, wrongfully accused in this case. Would you really want the investigator to be investigated, the FBI investigation come in, found nothing, internal investigation on the police, and then have the victim's family harassed, harangued, humiliated, businesses tried to be ruined by people who just happened to, no fault of their own, become involved in this case? Wrong place, wrong time. I mean, that should really make you think, what innocent person acts like this? And our media is just happy to go along with it, happy to write her side of the story and pretend like it's neutral. That Gretchen Voss article, we're going to circle back to it, but it's really shocking when you find out that all of that is Karen Reed's side of the story, and certainly not supported by the evidence. And that's was the public's introduction to it. So before I go, I just want to show you, since we were talking about him, hold on one second. Play a quickie.
In that picture right there.
So this is from Innocence Fraud Watch, their channel. They did a short one on Karen Reed's flying monkey, Nick Rococo. Is that how you pronounce
Little
his last
girls
name?
in the background are Jennifer McCabe's children.
Clear. The Commonwealth is not opposing. The Commonwealth, however, does not assent, does not concede.
Rocco? I guess it's Rocco, right? Gotta be, right? So let's go back to the beginning. Do you guys, so for those in the back, pay close attention.
You can see in that picture right there, those two little girls in the background are Jennifer McCabe's children.
Clear. The Commonwealth is not opposing. The Commonwealth, however, does not assent, does not concede anything as it relates to any sort of relationship or whatever is being termed as a close personal relationship. The relationship, as the Commonwealth understands it, between essentially Trooper Proctor and Miss McCabe is that Trooper Proctor has a sister who has a friend who has a sister who has a husband who has a brother who has a wife who has a sister who is Jennifer McCabe. And it's such a close personal relationship that after apparently scouring social media, there are exactly 0 photos that counsel has produced of Miss McCabe and Trooper Proctor pictured together at any point in time. And essentially what you have to establish this close personal relationship is a wedding party from a decade ago and some photographs of Trooper Proctor with children purported to be Miss McCabe's children, which are not Miss McCabe's children.
So there you go. Not Miss McCabe's children. That's what we have. A whole lot of nothing. So even your pictures from baby showers years ago could all be used against you. It's really scary that anyone could be targeted for this. And put in, and the conspiracy changes all the time. So my question to the Free Karen readers is, what is the story now? Who was involved? How many people? What is it? We're at 90 people were involved in this conspiracy. I don't know, Eva, if Turtle Boy is protected. He's certainly going to have to face, I think he has something like 19 felony charges, indictment charges against him for all around witness intimidation, harassing. Excuse me if I got that number wrong. It's hard to, so he's been arrested twice for harassing witnesses in this case. And Yannetti is still patting him on the behind on his way into court. So it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. I've been disappointed with the judge as far as I don't think 200 feet was long enough, far away enough from the courtroom to have Free Karen Reed protesters. Apparently you can still hear them in the courthouse. I don't think it's a good idea to have Aidan Kearney in the courtroom at all with his history of saying that he's going to dox the jury, that he's already gone after in another case, another juror, and that was post conviction or whatever. I think it was a hung jury in that case. It wasn't a conviction, but the trial was over. But he doesn't seem to have any scruples as far as what he'll do he's told people, get on the jury, nullify it. Just don't get caught lying. So I think she's lost a little bit of control from her courtroom. And the free Karen readers should want Karen Read to have a fair trial. Do you guys have questions? Thanks, Mira. I hope I feel better. I am feeling a little bit better every day. Thanks. Okay, Eve says, how the heck did they stop the trial for him with his record? Not sure what you mean exactly. Eva, if you have a different question. Well, one was shown mirrored. I think one of the first days I thought one of them was shown, but I can't, that's my memory. I saw them back side to side on Twitter because I thought they were presented the first day. Sarah Adams, thanks so much. Nice to see you. Murder by Meister is asking, what do you think of Elizabeth Little's first cross? I thought it was completely inconsequential and ineffective, but I'm probably not the right audience for it. I think all these witnesses have been great. I mean, think back to the Dan Markel case about some of the witnesses that we had in that case. People who came from the clink. I mean, to testify. These are really salt of the earth people who have jobs helping people, public servants with kids who are dedicated to their kids. Any kind of, I haven't seen them really perjure themselves or get caught in some kind of lie. Even if it was totally inconsequential, you know that the defense and the free Karen readers would have been celebrating. The closest they've come to it is the female firefighter who said she's an acquaintance of Caitlin Albert back then, which I find totally believable. But close friend and acquaintance are subjective, and I don't think you can ever prove that she perjured herself. It's hard to know, Sunny Day. What do you think of the jury's impressions are so far? I'm not in the courtroom. I can't imagine. I thought a good sign was when we had that officer on the stand and he said, would you believe me that John O'Keefe was this tall and weighed that much? And the officer said, I wouldn't believe it if you told me. I would believe Lally. I opened with that clip, I believe. And the whole courtroom erupted into laughter, which to me shows that they're getting a little tired of the defense team going scorched earth on every single witness and playing really rough with every witness. I think it was Grant Smith Ellis who was saying he believes that Alan Jackson has really toned down his cross-examinations because of that the jury was not liking it. But that is what he's famous for, is those kinds of really, really harsh cross-examinations. So I don't know. I'm very nervous when you have these kind of wacky campaigns and you have them so close to the courthouse and really coming into the courthouse. I get very nervous that it'll be a wacky verdict here. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if, it may be the damage may be done. So it doesn't really matter if Aidan Kearney comes back. It's what he did while he was in there. Did he take pictures of the jurors? Is he trying to dox the jurors? Is he trying to get to the jurors? We know that the Free Karen Reed, I don't think this is too paranoid, but the Free Karen Reed movement has a lot of money. Small town. Are they going to intimidate, bribe, get to a juror, threaten to expose them? I don't know. And I think this was a question all along with this case, because I've never seen a case like this where people are so harassed pre-trial. I've seen it post-conviction, but not pre-trial. I know there have been other innocence fraud campaigns that started pre-trial. But this one is a doozy, and it's been so accepted. And it should really make you think about all these people we hold up as experts. People call themselves profilers and behavioral analysis, body language experts, ex-FBI people. Like I said, there's a reason why we have jury of your peers deciding this. Our court system is meant to be understood by any one of us. We shouldn't need these experts' opinions to lean on, right? All of us should be capable of evaluating the evidence. All right, so that's what I have for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night. Have a great Mother's Day, everybody. Please hit the thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Subscribe to the channel. Leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Have a great night, everybody.